a friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 632. In the neighborhood, my brothers and sisters. As we proceed to give you what you need, we are going back to Jose Ortiz from Evil Intentions. Back to Evil Intentions, y'all. Hope y'all doing excelente out there today. And I'm glad that you came on back to the channel once again to Elf with the Bean. And the title of the video is Slain on TV for Millions to See. Just feet away from daughter's grave. Yandra Nunez, Maritza Martin. Boy, Jose know how to throw them titles out there, daughter. He know how to put some of the most craziest titles out there, man. And I'm sitting up here wondering, y'all, this one I'm really wondering from this title. Like, not even a how, but why was she slain on TV for millions to see? You know what I'm saying, man? Like, why was that even a freaking predicament that she was in, that she was being recorded by a news station or something? Like, what's going on, y'all? I need some freaking context to this freaking story here, and that's what we're about to get. But before we get that, my brothers and sisters, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. We are back to Jose Ortiz from Evil Intentions. Y'all got what y'all need, y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Porque cuando manda el corazón, siempre manda el amor. Este lunes disfruta en familia Marimar.
2 muertos y más de 70 heridos son el resultado del primer choque entre israelíes y palestinos.
Sapiensas, tú eres un ser que estás dando siempre, Virgo.
En defensa propia.
Joandra Núñez, la muchacha.
Historia, Primer Impacto investiga, mañana.
Qué bueno es contar con Mistolín, ahora con mayor poder de...
Hoy vamos a hablar de la estática. Estática es lo que tiene su vestido, profesora.
Espera, ¿qué es un cantazo? Heriberto, un cantazo, un trancazo, un tanganazo, es lo mismo.
Llame a Trollman y Glazer al dos.
Tomo esa de quitarte la vida.
Los fugitivos. En el Arminian Hall, directamente de Honduras, el espectáculo.
Para eso aquí tengo las nuevas Caplet de Pepto.
La salsa de Eddie Santiago en una nueva edición de Sábado Gigante Internacional.
Sábado 23 de octubre en el Madison Square Garden, con la participación estelar de Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, Oscar de León.
Su gira en México fue extraordinaria.
Ocurrió así, es impacto.
Y ese día, al mismo tiempo,
Noticias, entretenimiento, experiencia. Ocurrió así.
¡Vámonos, vámonos!
If your family was anything like mine, your television was more than likely set to Univision and Telemundo every single day. If you lived in Manhattan like myself, those would have been channels 41 and 47, back when those easily hackable black boxes were in every household. Now there were countless channels playing shows and cartoons geared toward kids my age, but once it hit a certain hour, that TV was off limits because it was time for the news, and after that, time for novelas. I've probably seen every popular novela from the 90s twice. Marimar, Mariela del Barrio, Guadalupe, Dos Mujeres Un Camino. You couldn't escape the popularity of telenovelas, and they could only be seen on channels like these. No ability to search for it after it aired, and no downloading leaked episodes. Once it aired, that was it. Reruns were your only hope. But while these stations were known for their sometimes over-the-top programming, they were also known for delivering the news in very raw form. Shows like Ocurrió Así on Telemundo were known to show the reality of what was happening in the country and across seas, and they censored very little. For a lot of us, it would be our first time seeing those types of vivid images. It showed us that not everything was a sitcom or a fantasy. It showed us that the real world wasn't always pretty, and sometimes a lot worse than we thought. But in January of 1993, one horrific incident would be broadcasted to millions of households across the world, one that was very different from anything we'd seen before, and it all centered around the final moments of one young girl just months prior. On today's episode of Evil Intentions, this is The Promise, the stories of Yoandra Nunez and Maritza Martin Munoz.
Get whatever you may need.
El cementerio donde
And see, this is why I love Jose Channel, y'all, because he take me back to the 90s, man, which in my opinion is the best era ever. The 90s, and I was a little child in the 90s, man, but I just feel like that era was just so freaking cool, man. And whenever we be watching Jose, for the most part, you know what I'm saying, he always taking us back to that time. And it's also awesome to see what Hispanics was watching on TV at that time. And I heard of Telemundo before. I think I remember, not even just heard of, I remember Telemundo when I was freaking growing up. But it's just so awesome to see that, man. And another thing he said, and I know I'm going on, but just follow me real quick, Bean Team. Another thing he said right then that just brought back memories. Y'all remember the time before, well, if you wanted to watch something on TV, you had to literally watch it when it came on. Because if you didn't, you probably ain't gonna never see it again till a couple of months later or a couple of weeks later when they finally do a rerun of the freaking season or whatever. You know what I'm saying, man? You had to be right there in front of that freaking TV to watch whatever show the next episode you trying to watch, or you just it's out of luck. Like seriously, that's how it used to be back then. Nowadays, man, you can a show can come on 5 minutes from now, and you literally can click on it and go back 5 minutes and start from the beginning at the snap of a freaking finger. Y'all know what I'm saying, man. But I digress. I know I just went on a whole diatribe. But W to Jose, man. Good start to this video. Let's go.
donde estaba su hija sepultada. Y ese día, al mismo tiempo que el equipo de Ocurrió Así se encontraba junto a él, apareció casualmente su ex esposa Maritza.
Yoandra Nunez was born on May 29th of 1977 and resided in North Lauderdale, Florida. Before making the relocation to Florida, Yoandra was a small girl living in Cuba in the late 70s into the 80s. Her parents, Maritza and Emilio, met when they were just teenagers in Havana and began dating when they were young. Life in Cuba wasn't the easiest back then. Many were looking for a way out due to repression, poverty, and major issues with the economy. Since he met Maritza, Emilio had an infatuation of sorts with her. Even though they were young, he looked at her as someone he wanted to be with forever, someone he wanted to start a family with. By the time Maritza and Emilio were only 18 and 19 years old, he would ask her to marry him. Emilio's father thought the couple was a little too young to be making such a big commitment. He asked his son to wait before making the decision, but it appeared that his mind and heart were already set on it. The couple would become officially married in 1977. It wouldn't be long after that they would be welcoming a child into the world, a baby girl they would name Yoandra. They were excited and proud to be bringing a healthy child into the world, but the happiness between the two parents was short-lived. In 1978, just a year after tying the knot, the young couple would end up getting divorced. Their relationship wasn't the healthiest, and they were still very young, their whole lives ahead of them. But for Emilio, there were some very tough times ahead. In 1979, Emilio was arrested for allegedly speaking about the current state of Cuba, and because he had plans to flee. He shared his plans of leaving with a friend who then gave him up. For those reasons, he was considered a political prisoner and would be sentenced to 20 years in a Cuban prison for crimes against the government. This, of course, would have a huge impact on his ability to be a father to Yoandra. It was said that he was devastated by the separation from his family, even if he was no longer with Maritza. It was said that he was so badly affected by things that he would undergo psychiatric treatment and even electroshock therapy for help. By 1980, Yoandra was almost 3 years old, and things were about to change in a big way. Between April and October of 1980, Cuba would see the start of the Mariel boat lift, a mass exodus of more than 125,000 Cubans coming across treacherous waters, arriving in Florida. It was a trip thousands had made in the decades leading up to the 80s. Many saw how their families made the change and were living in the United States, so a relocation offered a chance at a new start. Maritza would be one of the many who made that trip in 1980 to make a living, to provide for herself and her daughter. She left Yoandra back in Cuba in the care of her mother while working in Miami, saving up enough money to bring her mother and daughter to the States 9 years later in 1989. This would also be the year that Maritza remarried to a man named Armando Martin. They would have a son together later on. From 80 to 89 was a long time away from her daughter and rest of her family, but it was worth it. She felt the change was very much needed. 1989 would also be when things changed for Emilio. He would be one of more than 100 political prisoners who had his sentence cut and was released from prison following a deal made with the United States. He was granted asylum in America, giving him a second chance. Yoandra was getting older, and Emilio had been in prison pretty much her whole life. But despite this, it was said that he had every intention of being a father to his daughter, and after his release, he would also be on his way to Miami, Florida, for a fresh start.
I don't like where it's going, man. I mean, I understand where it's going because, you know, the father got out of prison. He want to go get back in touch with his daughter. I understand where it's going, but I feel like it's finna go bad, though, man. Let me read the title again. Slain on TV for millions to see. Just feet away from daughter's grave. Is Emilio the one who freaking murdered the mama? And then on top of that, who murdered Maritza, and on top of that, why is Yoandra even dead? Did the daddy do that too? I don't know where we going with this one, y'all, but I just got evil intentions on my brain right now. Maybe we ain't going that way. Let's see.
Emilio was now remarried as well and left Cuba with his new wife and her son, whom he was a father figure to. By total coincidence, when his plane landed in Miami, Florida, he would bump into Maritza and his daughter. She was around 10 years old, but didn't really know Emilio since he wasn't around to raise her. It was a tough pill to swallow for him, but it was something he had no choice but to accept. Nunez was settled near downtown Miami in a one-bedroom apartment before relocating west of Delray Beach, where he lived in a mobile home. The home was situated on a farm that he managed. It was how he made his living. It was stated that although the mobile home was small, he had created a space for his daughter to sleep in case she ever wanted to come live with him. According to him, she was always in his thoughts, even if he wasn't in her life as much as he had hoped to be. Regardless of all the time lost, it was said that he wanted to have a bond with his daughter, and Maritza wasn't against it. She wanted him to have a close relationship with her, but that wouldn't come as easily as they had hoped. Yoandra was now living in Miami on a quiet street in North Lauderdale with her mother and mother's husband. She spent the next few years adjusting to her new life in the States and was now on her way to junior high, where she would attend Rickards Middle School in Fort Lauderdale. She had a lot of friends while here and was even voted most popular student. She was described as someone with a great sense of humor, someone everyone wanted to have a friendship with. As she reached her teen years, she was invested in her schoolwork, becoming a straight-A student, and becoming a part of her school's Crime Watch program. This was a program designed to encourage positivity between students and keep the school safe. She also attended Pompano Beach Middle School, where it was the same. She had a lot of friends who saw her as a happy and lively young girl, but as she got older, things would start to change. She was now a high school freshman and attending Northeast High in Oakland Park, but things were very different. While she was still the loving person her friends knew, her grades were starting to drop and she was skipping class, something she would start to do more and more often. She would also
sound like me when I got in high school. Grades started dropping. Well, my grades started dropping in middle school, but still, man, grades started dropping even more and started skipping class. Sound like me. Hope my mama ain't listening.
also become somewhat withdrawn. She confided in a few friends, explaining that things at home were becoming hard, and a big part of it was the fact that Yoandra, now just 15 years old, had been dating a boy named Angel, and she had become pregnant. By November of 1992, she was already going on 13 weeks, and her parents weren't yet aware. It wasn't clear what else might have been going on, or what type of issues began between her and her mother, but it was said that Maritza had been investigated by Child Services for possible abuse due to her hitting Yoandra with a belt. No word on if this was something that happened just once or if it was an ongoing thing, but it was officially reported. Either way, everything going on apparently weighed heavily on Yoandra's mind, and it would end in tragedy. On the evening of Wednesday, November 25th of 1992, Yoandra offered to clean her parents' car. They didn't think anything of it and were fine with that. But on the next morning, on Thanksgiving, her mother and stepfather would walk into her bedroom and find her in her bed, lying face up, lifeless. She had a wound to her chest, done by a .25 caliber pistol, something her mother had for protection. She didn't keep the weapon in the house. It was always kept in the trunk of her car. It seems that this was the reason Yoandra asked to clean the vehicle the night before, to get her hands on it. A medical examiner would quickly conclude that the wound to her chest was done by Yoandra herself. The sudden tragedy would leave students at her school in complete shock, grieving and coming to grips with everything. They didn't expect this to happen and didn't know things had gotten so bad for her. It was also the hardest thing in the world for her mother to accept. She was inconsolable. The family did what they could to help and ease the pain, but it just wasn't possible. By this time, Maritza's son was a little over a year old, and she needed to remain strong for him and the rest of the family. She tried her best, but the grief wouldn't subside anytime soon. The family would now find themselves suddenly planning Yoandra's funeral, but there was something else to worry about: Yoandra's father. Over time, the relationship between Maritza and Emilio had become something else entirely. It was said that Emilio had become obsessed with her, and had been for a very long time. The idea that he wasn't in his daughter's life, but another man got to raise her, created a heavy bitterness. Maritza had grown to become scared of Emilio due to his temper. When their daughter Yoandra took her own life, she couldn't find it in herself to even tell him. He would end up finding out about the tragedy on the same day of his daughter's funeral. His phone rang.
Whoa, y'all. Whoa. Oh, let me grab that. Whoa, man. Let me just talk about this real quick before we even go into the Emilio and Maritza situation, which is just as crazy. But no, it ain't crazy as this. It ain't as crazy as this. I did not expect that girl. That came out of left field. Like, that felt like a freaking sucker punch out of nowhere. The fact that she ended up committing suicide. You know what I'm saying, man? Unaliving herself. I did not see that coming at all. I thought that somebody murdered her, but she did it to herself. Like, that part had my mouth just open for a minute. Like, what? And then it's finna spiral even more out of control with her parents now. Oh, I'm starting to get a little emotional, and a little is an understatement.
Rang, and it was a family member who said the following: Emilio, your daughter is dead. She's being buried in an hour. If you want to see your baby, your only child, one last time before she is buried, you have to run. Learning of this for the first time, he was distraught, overcome with grief and anguish, and he instantly blamed her mother and stepfather for what happened. He was enraged at the fact that nobody told him. He hadn't been in his child's life much, and now he would never get the chance to right any wrongs, to finally be a father figure. Emilio would make it to the funeral as fast as he could, and when he got there, he would begin asking her friends questions about her, asking if she loved him, if she hated him, if she thought that he had abandoned her, and the replies from her friends weren't good ones. The problems between her mother and father were affecting her more than anyone knew. She was young when he was in prison, and even when they were all in Miami, she hadn't seen him other than that one time at the airport. It was very hard for her to see him as her dad, and if he was in fact making an effort to be a father to her, she wasn't aware of it. This was also when he would find out that his daughter was expecting a child. It only made things worse. Many family members and friends came to Yoandra's funeral to pay final respects, but there was a darkness that clouded the service. Due to Emilio making threats against Maritza and her family, police were also at Yoandra's funeral. After asking many at the service about why his daughter took her own life, it seems the answers he was getting weren't good enough for him. He had every intention of getting to the bottom of this, and in his eyes, someone had to pay. From that day forward, the threats were non-stop. Emilio didn't believe his daughter did this to herself. He believed that someone did it to her, one way or another. He would spend his days driving around Maritza's neighborhood, stalking her, and even following her into stores and other public spaces. He even said that he believed Yoandra had been impregnated by her stepfather, but that didn't appear to be the truth, because when she took her own life, she left a note in her handwriting. She would name the father of her unborn child as Angel, the boy that she had been dating. The letter also said that she wasn't the daughter her mother wanted her to be. The police investigated the claims, but felt there wasn't anything to back up Emilio's theories, and it was clear that she took her own life. It would take some time, but he was now convinced that his daughter really did do this to herself. But
yeah, Emilio, man, I understand that he don't wanna accept the fact that his daughter did that to herself. But man, the writing on the wall, she did it, y'all. She did it. Like, he even took it as far as talking about the stepdaddy, the one who impregnated her. And you know what I'm saying? He's just thinking way out there. But no, man, that really freaking happened. And that's another thing too. Not only did she take her life, that's another thing that make it even more effed up. She took her unborn child life too, which would be their grandchild, the mama and daddy, Maritza and Emilio. Oh, it's just messed up all the way around.
Still placed the blame on her mother, saying his daughter was driven to do this after a bad argument with the mom. Emilio said Maritza was responsible regardless, since she left this weapon somewhere Yoandra could easily get a hold of it, and because Maritza slapped her in the face when she told her that she was pregnant. The claims of possible abuse also fueled his rage. This situation was now becoming more about Emilio's quest for answers and less about Yoandra herself, and nothing could bring her back. Maritza was also dealing with this grief. Neighbors stated that her daughter's passing was extremely difficult for her. She couldn't bear to live in their home anymore. It was a reminder of the dark turn that life had recently taken, so she put up the house for rent at first, eventually putting it up for sale. Even after the home was emptied out, she could be seen parked out front in silence, just crying or in a trance-like state, likely asking herself how it all came to this. Another reason for leaving the home was that the threats from Emilio just never ended. Her and her husband were truly afraid that he would do something to harm them or their son. They would end up leaving where they lived and going to live with relatives in another part of Florida, somewhere Emilio wouldn't be able to find them. The constant death threats and endless anger coming from him would prompt Maritza to go to a local precinct where she would ask for an order of protection to keep her and her family safe. The stalking, the verbal attacks, the theories, the countless times that he had driven by, promising repeatedly that he would take her life. It was too much to handle, and she needed help, but she wouldn't be getting it from the authorities. When she asked for the restraining order, she was told by them that it wasn't a good idea, because this would only anger Emilio further and make the situation worse. They clearly weren't taking the situation as seriously as she had hoped. Meanwhile,
what? Hold on, what? Because now we not even making no sense in the story no more. Now we not making no freaking sense no more. Jose, are you telling me that the freaking police told this lady that no, you can't get a restraining order on your crazy baby daddy because your daughter end up, doing unaliving herself, and now he done went crazy, blaming you, threatening you, saying he gonna kill you and your new boyfriend or your new husband or whatever? No, we not gonna do that. We not gonna make sure that you are safe because that's gonna make him even angrier. What? Man, come on, man. See, and Jose cover a lot of cases where he goddamn police be dropping the ball. And I'm not talking about a little golf ball. I'm talking about a freaking damn boulder ball. Fuck a beach ball. We talking about a ball as big as a boulder. What they be dropping. Man, how could it need to be some lawsuits with this. How could the police even be this damn stupid? It make you point to the point where you just be like, man, they just don't care. They don't care. And I ain't talking about all police either for anybody. I ain't talking about all police. I'm just talking about in this specific situation. They ain't give a damn about what was going on to come with an answer like that.
While she was living every single day in fear for her life, not sure when she would bump into him again and if he would follow through with his threats. Emilio had also grown frustrated with authorities because when he told them everything that he thought really happened, he felt they didn't care or take it seriously. They told him the case was closed and he needed to leave it alone. This would leave Maritza and her family on their own, and Emilio on a path of vengeance with what he felt were many unanswered questions. Nearly 2 months after the tragedy, feeling that he had nobody else to turn to, he would place a phone call to news station Telemundo in January of 1993. They had multiple offices in Florida. He told those at the station that his daughter was deceased and he believed her mother had something to do with it. The story would get the attention of journalist Ingrid Cruz, who worked for Telemundo on a show called Ocurrió Así, a program similar to a hard copy or a current affair. She saw the man was extremely passionate about his daughter and would offer the platform as a way to get his story out to the public. Cruz and a cameraman would set up a date to interview Emilio about his daughter and everything that he had been theorizing about. It was set for January 18th of 1993. They visited Emilio at his mobile home, set up the camera, and asked him questions regarding his daughter and ex-wife. The following footage is from that interview.
Hace menos de 3 años la madre tuvo un problema de abuso infantil con ella misma, donde ellos tuvieron que ir a una serie de visitas de médicos y de consejeros, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera.
¿A quién usted culpa de la muerte de su hija?
Bueno, si se viene a ver, hay varios culpables, pero hay un culpable fundamental. El culpable fundamental y principal de esto es la madre. Y yo la estoy acusando formalmente ante la policía. Yo se lo he planteado varias veces al instructor policial que tiene el caso. Y él me ha dicho, sí, después yo te tomo las declaraciones. Sí, después vamos a ver qué pasa. Sí, después yo te llamo. Pero hasta ahora, nada en concreto.
After this footage.
And see, this go back to what I was saying earlier, y'all. And I'm not trying to freaking excuse him or nothing like that. He's still in the wrong because we know what he ended up doing. But I'm just going to say this. It go back to what I was saying earlier, right? He do not want to believe that his daughter did this to herself so much to the point where he really believed that the mama had something to do with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had, because first he was just in denial, just in freaking denial, like, no way she could do this. But now that denial turned to, okay, if she didn't do this, then the mama had to been made her do this, or the mama was the one who did it. You know what I'm saying, man? He had to find someone to put the blame on, and he ended up putting it on the mama. It's sad, but it's gonna get even worse with what he gonna end up doing to Maritza. Let's go.
Footage was shot. The producers of Ocurrió Así had the idea to accompany Emilio to his daughter's grave to capture footage of him putting flowers down. They had agreed to meet a little while later, and in the meantime, they would go visit Yoandra's boyfriend to interview him as well. Her boyfriend would say that Yoandra had once written a letter saying she wanted to take her own life, and on one occasion also mentioned wanting to go live with her father. This interview offered a look into what she was going through and her state of mind before she did what she did. Once that interview with Angel was over, her and her cameraman would be on their way to Our Lady Queen of Heaven Cemetery to meet with Emilio, who was with his current wife and her child. Since his daughter took her life, he had been visiting her gravesite daily, leaving flowers. But this reporter and her cameraman had no idea that just a few minutes later, another terrifying tragedy would unfold right before their eyes. Footage would show Emilio laying flowers on his daughter's grave when suddenly, out of the camera's view, a car approaches. Emilio tells Cruz that he recognizes the car. It belonged to his ex-wife. Cruz would approach the car, and it was indeed Maritza, also there to pay respects to their daughter. A total coincidence. Cruz knocked on the driver's side window of the car, asking the grieving mother if she had anything to say about why their daughter might have done this. She stood in the vehicle, looking straight ahead, almost in disbelief of the timing, likely asking herself if she should just leave or if she should get out. Meanwhile, Emilio stood near his daughter's grave and seemed calm at first, but he would then start walking over to Maritza's vehicle. As he tried approaching, he could be heard saying, "Go ahead, talk now," almost daring her to speak up. Reporter Cruz would tell Emilio to please stay back to avoid any conflict as he kept talking in anger. A few seconds later, Maritza exited her vehicle, but remained quiet as she was asked questions. By this time, Emilio was in his car, and she walked right past it, stopping to write down his license plate number as he began to drive off. This looked to be the end of the tense confrontation, but as the cameraman, Cruz, and Maritza walked toward Yoandra's grave, things took a horrifying turn when Emilio pushed a reporter out of the way and began firing at his ex-wife, striking her in the back of her head. As she fell to the ground, he continued firing. He would let off a total of 12 rounds, with 10 of them striking her in the head, neck, ribcage, stomach, and back. From one moment to the next, Maritza was here, and now she was gone, losing her life in a brutal attack, drawing her last breath just a few feet away from her daughter's grave.
Like, dude, he made sure he killed her. You know what I'm saying, man? To just continually shoot her in all these different areas and stuff. He made sure that she was not gonna survive these gunshots. But I be having the most serious. I be feeling like I be having the most serious deja vu over here when we be watching these videos, y'all. And I'm pretty sure, because I be feeling like it's deja vu, but most of the time in the comment section, y'all be letting me know like, nah, it ain't deja vu. You have heard of this story before. And I honestly feel like once we started to see those video clips and stuff of what actually happened at the grave site, in the graveyard, at the cemetery, or whatever may have you, I feel like we have heard of this story from Mike from that chapter. If it wasn't Mike from that chapter, it was Adrian from Coffee House Crime. One of those two, y'all, I feel like we have heard of this story from. Y'all let me know down in the comment section, man, if we have heard of this story. It may be Lazy Masquerade, Tragedy Tales, who freaking knows? And it's so rare. I think this is the first time ever where I was watching a Jose video and I feel like I have heard of this story before. You know what I'm saying, man? Because a lot of his stories just be from freaking out of nowhere that you have never, ever, 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 ever in your life heard before. But I may have heard of this one before. But it don't change the fact that it's freaking ridiculous and crazy. That is crazy. That man wanted to let alone take back what I was talking about the how many times he shot her. Like, he wanted to make sure he was dead. This is another reason you just know he didn't give a F. He knew he was on camera. He knew the news folks was there, and he still did it. Crazy, man. Let's go.
In total shock, the reporter asked Emilio what he had done, in disbelief that she was now a witness to a cold-blooded slaying, and his response was, "What I should have done a long time ago." Emilio jumped back in his vehicle and drove off, leaving the reporter, cameraman, and his family behind at the cemetery. Cruz's cameraman would make a call to 911 right after, letting them know what happened and that Emilio might be coming after them next. An awful tragedy concerning a 15-year-old girl had now become something that nobody outside of this family ever saw coming. Back then, it was one of the only times in which you saw something like this play out. And even worse, nobody had any idea where Emilio was. He was now on the run and considered armed and dangerous. Federal agents received a tip of a man fitting Emilio's description and were able to track him down. They would follow a Greyhound bus that was bound for Los Angeles. The bus was approached by feds in Fort Stockton, Texas, and was filled with other travelers. When Emilio saw that they were there for him, he would immediately reach for his weapon as passengers ran off the bus. He was quickly overpowered by FBI and Border Patrol agents, and then taken into custody. He would be held at the Midland County Detention Center. As soon as it happened, Maritza's final moments would be broadcasted for millions around the world to see. When the story first broke, it was seen as a grieving father taking revenge on his ex-wife because she failed their child. But of course, there was much more to that story.
Police in Miami are looking for a killer tonight. They know who he is because of the crime, which was recorded by a television camera, and it was graphically recorded. Television viewers across the country saw portions of the tragedy. And news departments had to decide just how much to show. News 4's Lou Young joins us now with this story. Lou?
Well, Chuck, the cold-blooded murder of Maritza Martín Munoz might have gone unnoticed in South Florida, but for the peculiar fact that it happened in front of a television camera. Now, the story began as a tabloid TV look at a teenager's suicide. It turned into a frightening document of domestic violence. A distraught father pumped 12 bullets into his former wife. How much do you care to see? Emilio Nunez was putting flowers on his daughter's grave as a news crew from a Spanish-language network taped. His former wife arrived at the cemetery unexpectedly. As you watch this, the woman is seconds from being murdered. The reporter tried to talk with the woman. Nunez, who had apparently threatened his ex-wife before, suddenly lunged past the reporter and began shooting. Cameraman Jorge Delgado continued to tape. The disturbing sequence that follows aired in its entirety on the Telemundo network as well as on NBC Nightly News. News 4 New York has decided not to show the actual shooting. The reporter and cameraman ran for their lives after the shooting. The gunman escaped. The NBC network received 400 protest calls, we're told, here in New York alone. NBC's Miami station, WTVJ, planned to rerun the tape on its late newscast. A spokesman said it's not as graphic as some war video or scenes from Somalia. It shows a real problem with domestic violence. NBC News wouldn't...
It's not as graphic. Yes, it is. Anybody getting murdered on freaking camera is freaking graphic to me. She got shot 12 times on freaking camera for millions to see. I don't care if it's her or it is a war. That just kind of struck me when whoever made that, whoever that freaking quote came from. Yes, the freak it is graphic, man. Anybody getting murdered, that is effed up.
Comment tonight on his decision to run the tape. As for Emilio Nunez, he left his current wife and stepson behind at that cemetery and later ditched his car and is still being sought by South Florida police tonight.
The camera catches a killing as it happened yesterday in North Lauderdale, Florida. The tape comes from Channel 47, that's an affiliate of Telemundo, which is doing a story on a troubled family. And we warn you beforehand, the scene is quite graphic. The tape was rolling when Emilio Nunez placed flowers on the grave of his daughter. The pregnant 15-year-old died tragically over Thanksgiving, shooting herself in the chest. Just then, Nunez's ex-wife showed up unexpectedly at the cemetery. While the reporter spoke to her, Nunez crept up behind. Nunez apparently pumped 12 9mm rounds into his ex-wife. He reportedly blames her for the daughter's suicide, saying she slapped the girl around after being told of the pregnancy. North Lauderdale police say Nunez is still at large tonight.
The way the story was portrayed truly angered Maritza's current husband, who would then provide his version of events. He stated that, for one, Emilio never gave his daughter a penny and was someone who bullied his deceased wife. He said it was so bad that Maritza had grown fearful of him, and so had their daughter. So afraid that sometimes his daughter refused to use his last name. He said this portrayal of a man who cared so much about his daughter was a total joke because he was never there to begin with. He denied claims that he or his wife had anything to do with why Yoandra did what she did. He also said that claims of Maritza slapping Yoandra over her pregnancy weren't factual because they didn't even know. They found out she was pregnant after she took her own life. All they knew was that she was skipping class. Armando Martin's attorney would also mention that Maritza was so terrified of Emilio that she had even picked out a dress for her own funeral, as if she was certain that he would be the reason her life was cut short. And she was right. Now,
hey, I just gotta say real quick too, y'all, man. I'm sitting back wondering now, like, and I've been wondering it, but I just want to bring it to y'all. Like, why did she end up doing that? And I'm talking about Yoandra right now. Like, why did she? And we would never know this freaking answer, but that's the thing I want answered more than anything. Why did she end up unaliving herself? And from different sides of the table, different sides, you know, you got the daddy saying it was because of the mama, and now you got the stepdaddy saying that no, it wasn't because of that, ain't have nothing to do with it. But it's like, I don't even know who to believe on that side. I just wish we can get an answer from her, but we'll never get it. Let's go.
Now I have to be a father and a mother because I have to raise a 1.5-year-old alone. The baby will never see his mother or sister, Martin told reporters as he fought his way through tears. Aside from the obvious anguish and shock that this family was feeling, they'd also have to deal with the constant news reports of the shocking moment as it was replayed over the air over and over for weeks after. For many who had seen the footage, it was of course shocking, but they felt that there had to be more to it. Some tried to see things from Emilio's perspective. The idea that his 15-year-old daughter might have been mistreated by her mother when she revealed her pregnancy made people feel that this could have been a slaying driven by strong, overwhelming emotion. But just a month after the horrific incident was broadcasted to millions, Emilio Nunez's father would break his silence and echo some of the same sentiments as Maritza's husband. What he had to say spoke volumes about his son. During interviews, Emilio Nunez Sr. would say that his son was a violent man and he had made several promises to his ex-wife. He had promised her that he would one day take her life. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. According to him, his son made these threats long before he carried out the act. Nunez Sr. called his son disturbed and said he suffered from emotional issues since he was just a child. His first time realizing his son had a serious problem was back in Havana, when Emilio was in elementary school. He was considered a below-average student while there and had to repeat the 4th grade 3 times and had a lot of behavioral issues. He would also say that since about the age of 16, his son had been obsessed with Maritza, although he didn't specify why he felt this way. She was always a good mother in his eyes, and even though she and his son had already been married to other people by the time they were in the States, Maritza always tried to keep the relationship between Emilio and their daughter healthy. She wanted them to remain close, even if his temperament and issues were a problem. With time, it would become very clear that this story had many layers, and what we witnessed was a small part of it. In the end, a mother and daughter were now buried side by side, just feet away from where Maritza lost her life, and it was far too late to change anything. Their headstone would read, Juntas para siempre, madre y hija. I love you. Descansen en paz. After all of this grief and loss, it was clear that it was much deeper than anyone could have ever assumed. This back and forth, the obsession, it went back a long time. Whatever truly caused Yoandra to take her own life, whatever weighed so heavily on her mind, it would be completely overshadowed by the events of January 1993. Within a few months, family and friends were now dealing with 2 loved ones unexpectedly taken from them. Of course, they wanted justice and to see Emilio pay for what he did, but his day in court wouldn't come anytime soon. It wouldn't be until January 19th of the year 2000, the new millennium, almost exactly 7 years to the date of the broadcast, that a trial for Emilio Nunez was finally underway.
Why the hell it took 7 years to take this man to trial? Y'all be understanding what I'm saying, or how the freaking justice system is just the F up. Seriously, it took y'all 7 years to finally put this man on the stand for this. Man, I hope he get life in prison. Like I said, y'all, I got deja vu because I remember that footage at the graveyard from somebody from one of these channels we be watching, but I don't remember the outcome or nothing. Please let this man at least get life in prison. Let's see.
This would be after countless delays because of Nunez being difficult in court and raising complaints about past attorneys who had represented him. For a while, he was being evaluated and considered unfit for trial, and his lawyer suggested an insanity defense, but he rejected this, even if it was said that he had a long history of mental health issues. The problems never seemed to end, and Nunez continued to be a difficult client, known for his outbursts, even spitting on one of his former lawyers. It seemed that his anger and resentment had only grown much deeper, but there wouldn't be any more delays. This case at the time was Broward County's oldest case that hadn't yet been to trial, and they weren't taking any more steps backward. His attorneys would paint a picture of a man who was overwhelmed with grief and treated unfairly by authorities, a man who had tried to be in his daughter's life, but only knew her through pictures since he never had the chance. But the truth of his behavior had been known already, not only from Maritza's ex-husband, but his own father. After day 1 of the trial, Nunez would approach reporter Ingrid Cruz, who was also in court since she was a witness. He would tell her, "You utilized me as a dummy. You know it." Defense lawyers would also use this opportunity to say that Nunez carried out the horrendous act because he was under extreme pressure from the reporter, who was asking pressing questions, hoping to evoke a reaction. In other words, they were trying to say that this might have been a crime of passion. They even implied that it was the reporter who called Maritza to the cemetery that evening, knowing Nunez would be there to capture the moment on film. But there was never anything to back up that claim, and it wasn't true. Ingrid Cruz had no idea that Maritza would show up. It was just a terrible moment that all came together randomly, something nobody ever expected. Jurors were shown the tape of what happened at the cemetery, as others would take the stand, discussing every detail involving the case. After the defense spent nearly a week blaming the media and overwhelming grief for the tragedy, the ladies and gentlemen of the jury weren't convinced. There was far more evidence that suggested Nunez was an unhinged and angry person, someone who would have found one reason or another to do something like this. It would take only 40 minutes of deliberation, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for the slaying of his ex-wife, Maritza Martin Munoz. As the sentence
Yes, man. Thank you, y'all. Thank freaking you, Bean Team. I don't know why I'm thanking y'all, but thank God, man. Thank God, seriously, that he got what he freaking deserved, because y'all know how Jose is, man. A lot of these stories don't end up like this, man. I'm so freaking glad. And these damn defense attorneys out here, they some of the most disgusting people ever. The arguments and the things that they would try to stretch and reach for to try to make the man seem like he not guilty. They just freaking disgusting, man, with some of the stuff they be saying. Like, come on, dude. But yes, regardless of all that BS they were saying about him not being guilty, he was found guilty by the jurors. Thank God.
Sentence was read. Nunez held up handmade posters saying he wasn't given a fair trial. He and his lawyers pointed the finger at everyone but Nunez himself, when it was he who couldn't control his anger. It was him who stalked, threatened, and took Maritza's life. Nobody else was responsible for that action. The blame was all on him. As he was led out of the courtroom, Nunez would tell the jury, "I'll be back. I'll show you the truth later." He remains in prison today, now 65 years old. He won't be eligible for release until March of 2044. His life will likely end behind those prison walls. Maritza Martin Munoz left behind a young child, family, and friends who all waited very long for justice to be served, and they were finally able to start walking the long, never-ending path to healing. When they remembered Maritza and who she was to them, it didn't revolve around her final horrifying moments. It was everything else, and she would be forever missed. Yoandra Nunez also left behind family and friends who had all grown used to having her around, used to her loving personality and sense of humor. Some knew she was going through a hard time, but they couldn't imagine that it would ever come to this. The news was extremely hard for the students at her school, coming back from the Thanksgiving holiday only to hear about what happened to their friend on an announcement over the loudspeakers. The day before Thanksgiving, she was with friends, laughing and joking around, and now she was gone. Whenever Thanksgiving came around, they would think of her, wishing there was more they could do, cherishing the little time that they had with her. They would never forget her. What unfolded on January 18th of 1993 tells a story very similar to those we've heard before, one that played out as millions watched from their homes, a tale of obsession and anger, a child's story clouded by violence and resentment, with questions left unanswered. While many across the nation would witness this horror when it was aired, absolutely positive that they knew and understood why and how this all happened, one thing would become very clear over time. There are always two sides to a story. If alive today, Maritza would be 64 years old and celebrating her 65th birthday on October 29th. If alive today, Yoandra Nunez would be 47 years old. Rest in peace to Maritza Martin Munoz and Yoandra Nunez, and my deepest condolences go out to their family and loved ones. You aren't forgotten.
You aren't forgotten, Maritza and Yandra. You are not for freaking God, man. I just hate how it was like a snowball effect, y'all. How this story even just got to this point to where we at right now, man. And it started, I mean, I don't know if I hate to say it, but it's just the honest truth, man. It's just the honest truth. The snowball started with Yandra taking her life. You know what I'm saying? That was when it really just got to a point, and I'm not making no excuse for they what his name is, Emilio Fafilio. I don't even remember his freaking name. I think it is Emilio though, for real. But it got to the point where her taking her life made him go freaking crazy to the point where he took her mama life. Like, and I don't even want to speak for her, but I'm just saying, more than likely, man, just me thinking, my opinion, I'm pretty sure when she took her life, she didn't think that it was going to affect it to the point where her mama would end up dying. You know what I'm saying, man? Like, I don't think when people, and like I said, man, I'm going down a road that I don't really know, because in my brain, I don't even have these thoughts of doing this to myself. But I'm just saying, man, when people do commit the S word, y'all know what the S word is. I don't think that they think this is going to cause other people, my family, my friends, you know what I'm saying, to actually lose their lives. They just more focused on, I just want to take mine. I just want to leave this earth. I just want to get up out of here. I don't think she thought that would happen, and that snowball effect just ended up happening, man. And it came from a freaking daddy. So freaking terrible, man. I'm just glad my brothers and sisters, he got life in freaking prison. He like, Jose said he's 65 now, and he ain't getting out to 2044. Yeah, buddy, you done for, buddy. In 2044, what? That's 20 years from now, so he would potentially be 85. Yeah, buddy, you done, buddy. You done. I don't know if you gonna pass away or not, but by the time you get 85 and be eligible to get out, you might as well keep your old ass in there. Cause they gonna be the only ones that gonna be able to change your diaper and feed your pudding pops. Like, seriously, man. So go on, stay up in there, bro. And I'm glad your ass is locked up. Cause like I said, man, Jose, y'all know Jose. Y'all know how evil intentions do. A lot of these stories do not get freaking the best conclusion to them. I'll just leave it at that. A lot of these sentences don't even be sentences. The person be found not guilty, all type of crazy. But I digress. I'm gonna go and let y'all go now, y'all. I feel like we have been here long enough. Like I said, once again, man, rest in peace to those beautiful women who lost their lives way too soon over just some crazy ish, man. Oh man. I'm just still stuck on the snowball effect of how everything happened, y'all. How everything happened, it just got worse and worse and worse. But like I said, I digress. I'm gonna go and let y'all go. And before y'all leave, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And make sure you come on back tomorrow for another live stream reaction video. And until then, my friends, also, remember this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.